Welcome to Talk to Brazil with Tom Reaoch, the business connector to business in Brazil. Welcome to Talk to Brazil, the Business Connection, a leading Brazil business podcast talking about business in the world. I'm Tom Reaoch, an American from Pittsburgh living in Brazil and known for business networking and talking from my podcast studio in Campinas, São Paulo, Brazil. Today's guest is Gilberto Mayor, and he's talking with us from the city of São Paulo, Brazil. Gilberto Mayor is an expert in machine learning with a PhD in computer engineering from the University of Southern California. Large experience on leading the development of complex machine learning software for business problems. Also an expert in both probability and programming. He has studied at the Federal University of Minas Gerais here in Brazil, the Aeronautical Institute of Technology in São José dos Campos, Stanford University, and Carnegie Mellon in Pittsburgh. He was a research collaborator at the University of Campinas, Unicamp, and is now CEO at Pico, a machine learning company in Brazil. So with that, Gilberto, welcome to Talk to Brazil, the Business Connection.
Hello, Thomas. Nice to meet you.
And it's our pleasure, Gilberto. And as I mentioned, you have studied at some of the best schools in the world, and you're an excellent example of people learning, because you've been through so many institutes, and also now a fantastic example of machine learning. What are the similarities and differences?
Well, there are many similarities. I mean, nowadays, technology, especially if you work in technology or in any place, things are evolving very, very fast. For example, until a few years ago, or in the last decade, or in the last generation, one person could work the same type of work for the whole life. Nowadays, each like 10 years or 20 years, things are starting to get obsolete, and people have to learn new things. And in my view, for the next generation, the young guys will have to learn all the time, because and to do that, you really need a very solid education, and where you not only learn knowledge, but you learn how to keep learning. And that will be very, very important for the future.
Well, that's the secret. Learn to learn.
Exactly. You have to be studying all the time. And when you like it, when a person like it, it's a pleasure. And you don't get old because you are always up to date with the new technology. And nowadays, I mean, new technologies relate to machine learning. So that's a huge opportunity for everybody to start studying new things.
Yeah, but when you talk about machine learning for persons like myself who don't understand even the concept of machine learning, it sounds like something from Star Wars. How does the normal person understand what machine learning is all about? What is it?
The applications are really Star Wars, because they make airplane fly, cars drive by themselves. But the base behind it is actually very, very simple. I mean, it's like a human person. Before machine learning, let's say we want to make a car drive. We used to program the car how to drive. I mean, you have to turn right, you have to turn left. And instead of doing that, basically machine is a program that makes the machine learn by doing. So if, for example, it starts driving the car and see this is right, this is wrong, this is right, this is wrong, and it gets better until it's like a person in the real world. So there are no fixed rules, but there is a program that starts learning with the environment. In mathematical format is basically like, let's say you have linear regressions or a function that is very easy. Machine learning is able to capture very complex functions. So that's basically what it is.
So it's really back to the very basic binary concept: go, no go, right, wrong, right, left, right. And it's probably better, like you mentioned, because children or people don't seem to learn. You learn if you put your finger on the fire, but children, you can keep telling them, but they don't learn as easily, I think, as you just mentioned.
Yes, I mean, machine learning can learn fast, but contrary to people, they are not multitask. For example, you can do a program to teach a helicopter to fly, a car to drive, a robot to walk, or, for example, a recommendation system like Netflix. What is the movies that Thomas like most? Mm-hmm. But they are not multitask. They learn very well, usually just one task, and they learn by example. For example, machine learning are used to classify if an email is spam or not spam. Mm-hmm. So you can start label, this is spam, this is spam, this is spam. Then the machine can take one email and say, this seems to be a spam. But it only does spam classification, for example. And the difference is that humans can learn anything, right? Your machine.
Well, I agree with that. So from a company standpoint, so companies need to understand the concept of machine learning, because that's where it's at, I guess, from what you've just said. So if a company is not up to date in being able to interact through machine learning with its clients, with its customers, with the market, it's going to become obsolete as well. Is that true?
Yes, it's true. I agree completely with you, because it revolutionized not every single aspect of most of the industry. For example, for sales and marketing, one can use machine learning to have recommendation engine. So like Amazon, I want to show you the product that best fits you, and not like a series of products that you don't like. For doing selling, cross-selling, upselling. For example, for telecom, what we're trying to do is using machine learning to make the life of the clients better, so that we can find that there is a problem in your network or in your Wi-Fi even before you call us. And that's using machine learning. And it will revolutionize most of the industry. For example, for one very large consumer goods manufacturer, we develop what they call perfect order, which is basically a recommendation engine. They used to go in each of the 300,000 point of sales every week and sell their product. Right. And now the vendor goes there with the truck, but he has an iPad and has already a recommendation, say, and let's say they sell in little bakeries, like restaurants, every single establishment, right, either large or small. And now they go with iPad and it says, this is what you need. And sales increase by 10%. And the point of sale is the people really like it, because now they can buy the right stock at the right time. So, I mean, machine learning is applicable to every single, most of the aspect of every single, almost all industries. And it's important to move there. But it's not easy, It's really not easy.
Well, I can understand it's not easy, but what you just said, it's a concept that's now become easy to me as a consumer. And even now, because we're talking in the times of the pandemic, and there are many restrictions. But if I take this to a personal level, my local supermarkets, I live here in Campinas, I live in a sub-district called Barão Geraldo, which is a smaller community next to a very large city. But the three supermarkets here know me, and I think they know me through what you just said, the machine learning. So they know which day, and they make me offers for, today's a special day for the meat, the other day's a special day for vegetables. And I get all of this information even before I think of going to the supermarket. and each of them classifies specials for me. So I'm actually receiving machine learning without knowing that that's happening. Is that it? Is that it?
Yes, it's exactly. And if they get it even more sophisticated, they can tell, oh, Thomas, you haven't been here for the last 15 days. You might run out of eggs or something like that. So they might have your pattern, the things that you buy, and the frequency, and they can do forecasts and say, you should buy this and this right now.
So well, they're becoming sophisticated because, as I mentioned, you were a research collaborator here at the University of Campinas. Unicamp is right here in Barão Geraldo, and the university, or right around the university, is just full of different companies, enterprises that are leading edge in technology. So even the supermarkets here have become leading edge in technology. Even the pizza delivery, everybody seems to become a specialist in anything here because the whole neighborhood is just full of tech people. So I can see that as a consumer. I can feel how intense that is.
It's true. I mean, I have been to Barão Geraldo quite a few times. We have a small office actually in Barão Geraldo because of the great group of research and students at Unicamp. So, I mean, a lot of people, and including our CTO, which is a doctor in machine learning, come from Unicamp. So there are several startups and companies very successful that were born there because of Unicamp.
No, I can feel that. I also want to mention, because since I'm from Pittsburgh and you studied at Carnegie Mellon, and before we came on the air, you said you had lived in Pittsburgh. I personally get the same feeling that Pittsburgh, since I was born there, lived there for a long time, has also become an innovation center, but sometimes is not seen as that. As Unicamp in Brazil is known that, but outside the world, maybe not so much. Do you have that same feeling?
Yes, I do. I mean, Carnegie Mellon is one of the best universities in the U.S. I start doing computer engineering there, and usually computer engineer and computer science especially, is within like top 2, top 3 best U.S. universities. It's a beautiful city, a very nice city, and close to other very large cities. So it's nice to study an extraordinary amount of knowledge. I have friends that work there, and they are working drone industry because Pittsburgh, I don't know if people know, but Pittsburgh had one of the largest robotics centers in the world. For example, a lot of these flying drones from NASA are related to Pittsburgh. Mm-hmm. And there are several startups that were born in Pittsburgh and relate to robotics, related to communications. So it's a huge knowledge center. And I have the same feeling that you do have. It has evolved from a steel city to a knowledge city. And it's very beautiful. I mean, lots of trees and nice to live.
Oh, it's known. One of the things it's known for is the quality of life, really.
Yes, I like it there very, very much. Last year, before the pandemic, I met Julia Fan. And Julia Fan is a doctor at Carnegie Mellon, and she's studying machine learning. And I was asking her to help us on some communication problems. To be honest with me, it's like we are dealing with time series, and I was asking her what is the best technique of doing time series. But the neat thing about that is that Carnegie Mellon keep hiring and bringing new bright people all the time. So, for example, this relative young girl who's extremely bright in the machine learning field.
Yeah, I've had other people I've interviewed. Alex Fozel is one, and he's in Pittsburgh, and he mentioned that and talked about the robotics, the technology. We were members here in Campinas of a group. But he said exactly that. It's just amazing at the high rate of intelligence of the people, the types of people that have come to Pittsburgh and at the university. So, but I think one of the points you touched on from the many schools that you have studied and what you just mentioned, networking amongst professionals is also important. So going to a school and meeting and knowing people continues even afterwards, right?
Yes, it's extremely important. And the nice thing about the American university is that the critical mass of bright people that they have. I mean, if you walk in an American university, there are like Nobel Prize. You can see Nobel Prize there. So they have like a critical mass of people. They attract the best students worldwide, and they talk among themselves all the time. For example, right now, I have very strong research collaboration with Professor Ethan Katz at Columbia University and Arp Gupta at UCSB. And basically, I met Ethan through my former advisor, Dr. John Sylvester, and Arpit was Ethan's initial postdoc. So they talk among themselves and they collaborate among themselves, and I'm very lucky to have been able to enter this nuclear or this network again. But it's extraordinary, and it's such an amount of people that they have, say they have like an X-ray on what is being developed and researched in the world. When I ask them a problem, they start thinking, oh, have I seen any paper like that? Is someone that I know working on this issue? So it's very fast, right? It's like, it's extraordinary. I love it very much.
Well, I think that that's my personal opinion. The person seemed to be more open about that in sharing. And I think when you get the concept of Silicon Valley, but I think that's expanded, like you just said, to the schools that you've gone to. It's just not concentrated in an area. And what you have learned, you say learn to learn. Networking is also a process. You need to learn to network. And the more you learn to network, the better it becomes, the easier it becomes.
I agree completely. You have to learn how to network. And it gets easier, and it's very important in life, in every single aspect. For example, in the business aspect, for business development, and in the knowledge aspect, because you are able to reach people. As I said, for example, now I have collaboration with this like internet genius professor at Columbia, and then they called me to a workshop in Princeton last March, funded by NSF before the pandemic, and I met like people from Julia from Carnegie Mellon, right. People from Princeton. So it's exactly what you said. It was like a 3-day workshop, just sharing experience of using machine learning in computer networks, how we can use them to make computer networks better, easier to manage, and more reliable so that we don't have to call the call center anymore.
Well, to your point, and learning, something is happening literally every second somewhere in the world. And so if you are not connected, if you don't have your network, if you don't talk to people, you really, I would say you can't advance, but the challenge is larger.
I agree completely with you. For example, we see ourselves, Bigo, as a high-tech company. Given that, the only reason that we can do that is because we are connected to the US and to the American universe. I mean, actually, Bigo Corp is in the US and owns Bigo Brazil. But I mean, we talk with those professors from UC and from Columbia University every week, and they help us doing the R&D. Otherwise, I would say that is almost impossible because you don't know what is going on in the other place. So you never know if you're doing like state of the art if you don't have this X-ray. So it's very, very important to be connected there.
Well, I saw in your LinkedIn profile where you mentioned Beagle. And for our listeners, Beagle is Beegol. You say the company specialized in self-healing broadband networks. Self-healing sounds like, a health issue.
Yeah, and it's similar. It's basically Uh, a little bit about Pico. The name is an acronym for Pico, the dog, because this is the best sniffer. So basically, we think ourselves as detectives. We want to find problems in broadband network before even the client sees them.
So like a beagle sniffs everything out. That's what you want to do.
Exactly. That's what we want to do. And because the modem nowadays, and that's our value proposition, we claim that we went to a very, very large ISP in the US, and we work together with them, and they really liked our claim is the client should never have to call the call center. I mean, why should you have to call the call center? Your modem nowadays is a little computer. Right. It has 1 gigabit of memory. So we should be able to run programs in the modem and using machine learning, send data to the cloud to figure out if you have a problem in your modem, if you have a problem in your building, if you have a problem in your house, if your connective is too far away from the modem, you're getting poor video image quality. Right. So that's our value proposition. And we are being quite successful to do that. And as I said before, the nice thing about being connected to the university is that a lot of ideas that we are implementing here using like our great data science from Unicamp come from the US. Right. We share with those great professors the ideas. And it's like we treat the network as if it were a body. Let's say we think you might have something, then we do an X-ray in a specific part of your body. Mm-hmm. In other words, we get more data from one place and say, there is a problem in the block, or there is a problem in the building, or there is a problem at Thomas' home. Mm-hmm. So we can use all this data gathering, triage, and machine learning to identify the problem. The idea of the self-healing is really the network. Right. Some of the problems that we can find, they try to solve them automatically. Right. There are two levels of self-healing. One is solved completely automatically without human intervention. Mm-hmm. For example, if your Wi-Fi is not working well, it might be possible to solve it remotely, even before you see it. You don't need to go there. And the other level of self-healing is we still need doing human intervention, but we find the problem, identify, locate it, and generate what the ISP calls trouble tickets. In other words, we tell people, go there and fix this problem at this place right now.
Well, I can see where you mentioned a lot, if you're benchmarking, and the ideas come from the United States, because when we looked at the United States, and as I said, I lived there, I can remember when I was a small child in the 1950s, I would go out in the street and there would be, we called them telephone poles. Actually, they're utility poles, but they were telephone poles because they carried the telephone wire, and you had a telephone in your house in 1950. Most Americans had telephones for a long time. When I came to Brazil in 1970, I never had a phone. Most people didn't have a phone. After I moved to Campinas, for 3 years I didn't have a phone. It's not because I didn't want a phone. A phone was almost the price of a car here. But today, the telephone poles aren't telephone. They're still utility poles. I think the less thing that they do today in the States is carry a telephone wire. But that's the connection in Brazil. In the United States, you have access. You have communication networking. From East Coast to the West Coast, you have the size of the country has similar problems everywhere and similar solutions. So as you just said, the feedback that you get there is massive. Here in Brazil, we also have a very huge, physically complex country, north to south. And unfortunately, because of the infrastructure restrictions, we haven't been able to homogenize that network and connectivity. Here, the state of São Paulo is sort of a master case of excellence, but there are still places in Brazil where, unfortunately, they don't have electricity yet.
Yes, it's absolutely true. A lot of places they don't have electricity. sure. And there is a survey now that showed, like, if I'm not sure, more than 10% of the household that doesn't have broadband. I mean, mobile broadband is more prominent within small cities in Brazil, and the major problem is taking fiber to the rural area, to the smaller cities, because if you get a fiber to there, what I call backbone and backhaul,
right,
then it's possible to have broadband there. So it's interesting because there is a phenomenon that is only happening in Brazil, which now we have more than 1,000 what I call small ISPs. They are not very large, like Comcast, AT&T, Verizon, and they are deploying fiber on very small cities within Brazil. And basically, if we sum up the number of clients that belongs to these smaller ISPs, it's the largest player in Brazil right now. But anyway, we do have this infrastructure problem, and even in places where we do have fiber and cable, that we have like a super population in the poles, right? Too many wires.
Right.
So,
now, you made a point yesterday. I interviewed a person, Renan Bandeira, in Fortaleza, and we were talking about Fortalezas in the northern part of the country and geographically interesting for exports. And I was mentioning airports and seaports. But what he mentioned, it actually surprised me. Fortaleza is a cable port. He says most of the major cables from Europe come into Brazil, and I'm talking cable, I'm guessing they're the fiber optics. So the connectivity from Brazil to Europe is actually coming through the northern part of the country, and that's, I guess, the part of the backbone, right?
Yes, exactly. Usually, for example, let's say we're accessing a website either in the US or in the Europe. It goes from São Paulo to Fortaleza, and then it travels overseas. Most of the submarine cables go out of Fortaleza.
And that's something you never think about. You think about flying, you think about a boat sailing, but just back to what you said, we don't think about the cable, we don't think about the fiber optics, and maybe we should be.
Yeah, we actually have a very large client there, which is one of the consumer goods manufacturer, very, very large. It's actually a bottle for CocaCola. Mm-hmm. And they're starting using machine learning for recommendation systems, for logistics, and a lot of stuff. So they're trying to also develop a nucleus of machine learning there.
Well, we're all learning, right, Gilberto?
Yes, it's true. Forever, right?
Forever. Yeah. Well, I want to thank you for sharing and for what I've learned today. Unfortunately, we're coming to the end of our time, but thank you for taking part in our conversation today.
Okay, thanks a lot, Thomas, and very nice to meet you.
And again, for our listeners, you can find more about Gilberto Mayor, and that's Gilberto. The last name is Mayor. You can find him on LinkedIn, or Beegol, which is BEEGOL.com. BEEGOL.com. I'd like to thank our audience and our sponsor, Focus MI Market Intelligence. Focus MI specializes in market research for the Brazilian agricultural market. More about them on their site, which is FOCUSMI.com. FOCUSMI.com. Visit our website, TalkToBrazil.com. Find our previous shows of Talk to Brazil, which are also available on all major podcast platforms, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and YouTube. So remember, when you talk to Tom, you talk to Brazil and the world. Goodbye, and thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to Tom Reaoch on Talk to Brazil, the business connector to Brazil.